Leonardo da Vinci. A life of art, science, and curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, with its mysterious smile, might not be the world's most famous painting if he hadn't studied the human body so closely. To create that smile, which seems to change depending on how you look at it, Leonardo dissected human corpses. He peeled back skin to see the nerves and muscles that move the face, learning how they work together. He followed advice from Renaissance thinker Leon Battista Alberti, who said artists should picture the body from the inside out. First the bones, then the muscles, then the skin, and finally, the clothes. This approach made Leonardo's art feel alive, blending science with beauty. Leonardo was more than an artist. He was a scientist, an engineer, and a tireless questioner of the world. When he wrote to the Duke of Milan for a job in the 1480s, he bragged about his engineering skills, designing bridges that could be moved quickly for armies, cannons that could shoot multiple rounds, and even early tanks with sloped armor to block attacks. Only at the end did he mention he could paint. His notebooks, over 7,000 pages now kept in places like the Codex Atlanticus, show his endless curiosity. He scribbled things like, describe the woodpecker's tongue, wanting to understand every detail of nature. This drive pushed him to create and explore in ways nobody had before or has since. Early life in Tuscany. Born on April 15, 1452. In Anciano, a small village near Vinci, Italy. Leonardo was the child of Ser Piero, a wealthy notary, and Caterina, a young peasant woman. Some historians think she might have been a slave from another region. As Walter Isaacson writes in his 2017 biography, being born out of wedlock was lucky for Leonardo. It freed him from being forced into his father's legal profession, which wouldn't have suited his creative spirit. He grew up first with his mother, then with his grandparents in Vinci while his father worked in Florence. The Tuscan hills, rivers, and wildlife were his playground, sparking his love for observing nature. Birds flying, water flowing, plants growing. Around age 12, after his father's first wife died, Leonardo moved to Florence to live with him. Florence was a buzzing city, the heart of Renaissance art and ideas, led by the powerful Medici family. Because he was illegitimate, Leonardo couldn't attend formal Latin schools meant for future lawyers or doctors. Instead, he went to an abacus school, learning practical math for trade like adding and measuring. This helped him later with art perspective and engineering designs. He struggled with Latin his whole life, writing in plain Italian, often backward from right to left since he was left-handed, to avoid smudging ink. He even flipped his letters, maybe to keep his ideas private or just out of habit. When people mocked him for not knowing ancient authors like Plato, Leonardo shot back, "Foolish people. I don't quote books like they do, but I trust something better, experience." His earliest memory, written years later, was of a bird, a kite, hovering over his cradle and touching his lips with its tail, a story some think hinted at his lifelong fascination with flight. In Florence, he saw stunning works like Masaccio's emotional frescoes and Ghiberti's detailed bronze doors, which showed him how art could tell stories and look real. Learning with Verrocchio at 14. In 1466, Leonardo's father got him a spot in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, a top Florentine artist who'd studied under Donatello. Verrocchio's studio was a hub for painting, sculpting, and even mechanical work, perfect for Leonardo's wide interests. He worked alongside future stars like Botticelli, learning to mix paints, carve stone, and draw precisely. Verrocchio's bronze David statue, with its lifelike veins and muscles that seemed ready to move, amazed Leonardo and inspired him to study the body's inner workings. By 20, Leonardo was a master in the Artists' Guild but stayed with Verrocchio. In the Baptism of Christ, around 1472-1475, he painted an angel on the left using oil paint to blend soft, smoky edges around its face, his sfumato technique, making it look more real than Verrocchio's sharper style. In another work, Tobias and the Angel, Leonardo likely painted a shiny fish and a lively dog, far more vivid than similar figures by another artist, Antonio del Pollaiuolo. A story from Giorgio Vasari's 1550 book says Leonardo once painted a scary monster on a shield for a peasant, so lifelike it spooked his father, who sold it for a profit. In 1477, Leonardo started his own workshop, but work was slow, and he often left projects unfinished, a habit tied to his perfectionism. His home included young helpers like Gian Giacomo Caprotti, called Salai or Little Devil for his naughty streak. Many believe Leonardo and Salai were romantically involved, as Salai stayed with him for decades and inherited works like the Mona Lisa. In 1476, Leonardo faced accusations of sodomy, common in artistic Florence, but the charges were dropped. After 5 years of few successes, including an unfinished Adoration of the Magi with its bold, swirling figures, he left for Milan in 1482, sent by Lorenzo de' Medici with a horse-shaped lyre he'd crafted, showing off his musical skills. Milan and the Vitruvian Man in Milan. Leonardo worked for Duke Ludovico Sforza for 17 years, starting in 1482. His letter to the Duke focused on war machines, not art, fitting Milan's needs as rival cities battled. The city, with its huge Gothic cathedral, suited his engineering dreams. He advised on the cathedral's central dome, using ideas about balance and strength. Though his design wasn't chosen, this work led to his famous Vitruvian Man, around 1490, a drawing of a man in a circle and square, showing perfect body proportions, drawing from the ancient Roman Vitruvius, who said things like, "The foot is 1/6 of a person's height." Leonardo's version was special for its beauty and accuracy. The man's navel centers the circle, symbolizing divine harmony, while his feet and arms form a square, grounding him in the physical world. This idea, that human proportions could guide buildings, shaped Leonardo's architectural sketches, like plans for ideal cities with circular streets. In Milan, he painted the Virgin of the Rocks, a serene scene of Mary, baby Jesus, John the Baptist, and an angel in a cave with misty air and over 50 real plants. A second version came later due to payment fights. He also visited Hungary in 1485, painting a lost Madonna and meeting King Matthias Corvinus. Leonardo befriended mathematician Luca Pacioli, drawing geometric shapes for his book De Divina Proportione. His household grew with Salai and others, creating a lively, creative space. Inside the body, Leonardo's fascination with anatomy deepened in Milan. He dissected about 30 bodies, sneaking them from hospitals despite church rules against it. His 240-plus drawings, now mostly at Windsor Castle, show bones, muscles, and organs with stunning detail. He used tricks like filling organs with wax to keep their shape and cutting skulls to see inside. He was the first to draw the frontal sinus, a space behind the eyebrows, and made notes like how sitting shortens a man's height by half, plus the testicles' size. His heart studies were groundbreaking. He called it a muscle, saw that arteries stiffen with age, and showed how blood swirls in the aorta to close valves, ideas proven true much later. These findings helped his art. The Mona Lisa's smile comes from knowing lip muscles, and the Last Supper's apostles move realistically because of his muscle studies. He read old texts by Galen, but worked mostly from what he saw, even though he didn't eat meat out of respect for life. Engineering and war. Leonardo loved water's power and danger. He drew wild floods in his deluge sketches and planned to redirect the Arno River to cut off Pisa from the sea for Florence in 1504, designing a huge earth-moving machine, though it was never built. He studied birds for years, noting how some flap wings faster going down than up, and designed flying machines like the ornithopter, with flapping wings and an aerial screw, like a helicopter. These couldn't work then, but his ideas inspired later flight. In 1502, Leonardo worked for Cesare Borgia, a brutal warlord. He made a map of Imola so accurate, using a compass and distance measurer, that it helped Borgia plan battles. This map started modern mapmaking. Earlier, for Sforza, he designed tanks and submarines. In 1503, he mapped a valley to build dams, mixing engineering with care for nature. The Last Supper started in 1495 for a Milan monastery. The Last Supper shows Jesus saying one apostle will betray him, painted on dry plaster with a mix of tempera and oil. It faded fast but amazes with emotion. The apostles, in groups of 3, react with shock or guilt. Judas pulls back holding silver. Leonardo used perspective, with lines meeting at Jesus' head, to focus the viewer. He nailed a point on the wall to guide the lines, making the scene feel like it spills into the room. He said art should show what people feel through their poses, and his anatomy knowledge made this possible. The bronze horse in France. Leonardo spent years on a giant bronze horse statue for Sforza's father, making a huge clay model. But in 1494, the bronze was used for cannons, and French invaders later shot the model apart. After Sforza lost power in 1499, Leonardo wandered Italy, working for Borgia and starting the Battle of Anghiari in Florence, left unfinished. In 1516, France's King Francis I invited him to live near his castle in the Loire Valley. Leonardo brought the Mona Lisa, designed shows, and taught his student Francesco Melzi. The French, who once destroyed his work, now cherished his mind. The Mona Lisa, likely painted from 1503, the Mona Lisa shows Lisa Gherardini, a merchant's wife. Leonardo's sfumato blends colors softly, making her skin glow. The distant landscape fades realistically, and her eyes seem to follow you because of clever shading. Her smile changes, small when you look straight, bigger from the side, due to how our eyes see fine details versus broad shapes. Compared to his earlier Ginevra da Vinci, which looks stiff, the Mona Lisa feels alive. Leonardo kept it until he died. Final years, in his last years, Leonardo drew stormy floods, thinking about nature and death. He died on May 2, 1519 at 67, likely from a stroke in France. Though not religious, he left his soul to God and Mary in his will. Stories say Francis, I held him as he died, though that's likely a legend. His 13,000 notebook pages went to Melzi, showing a self-taught genius who learned by watching the world.